Hello everyone, and welcome to the Horror Snob. My name is Michael James. I am the Horror Snob, here today running down another forgotten favorites list with you. This time, we're going off a question that I hear asked a lot. I want to get my kid into horror. What's a good way to start to introduce that? What movies would you recommend? So I got 5 for you, technically 4 and a TV show, just to put out a little variation, but 5 recommendations altogether, a list I have specifically put together with the idea of trying to introduce horror at a baby step level to the youngest possible watchers. I'm keeping in mind thinking about 6, 7, maybe up to 10 years of age. Kids, not even necessarily preteens. If you have someone like that, of that age group, within your own family that you're trying to introduce horror movies to, this would be a great list for you to take note of. And even if you don't have somebody of that age, we all know a person or two, us who love horror. We have friends, family members who are on the opposite spectrum altogether, who absolutely hate horror, who never acclimated to it and don't understand our affection for it. This list is one of those that could bridge between the worlds, giving them and you something you can enjoy together. So yes, the idea may not be that this is targeting teens or adults. We're looking more at young kids, single digits. That doesn't mean there isn't something on this list that could apply for everybody. With all that being said, I want to get into the list, starting off at number 5 with Dave Made a Maze, a movie you might think has more in common with classic 80 films like Willow or Labyrinth, but has enough horror elements to it to use it as a launching pad towards deeper, darker, more serious things. If you're working with kids, trying to introduce horror to them, a great way is to find common ground where you can bring something that's relatable to them while introducing things that are new to them. What makes this such a relatable film to kids is the premise of it in general, where a guy by the name of Dave made a maze. At its most basic, the maze is nothing more than your typical living room fort. Something kids build all the time. Well, Dave's maze is a little more complex. Predominantly built out of cardboard, this thing is a labyrinth like something you've never seen, giving us a movie unlike anything I guarantee you have ever seen. With people's heads getting lobbed off, scenes of torture and torment, monsters chasing people down hallways, there are a lot of horror elements to this thing, laying the groundwork for those of youth to really understand what they can expect from the horror genre, while also providing all of us with an absolute elite level flick. You can find it available on Amazon Prime. I would highly recommend you take the time to watch it. And number 4, The Monster Squad, a cult classic film nowadays that at its time back in the 80s really didn't get a lot of notoriety, kind of went under the radar. And I personally never understood why. If you're looking for a launching pad into horror, one I have to recommend has to be the movie that was my personal launching pad into horror. It's one I grew up with, and I guarantee I've seen it at least a few hundred times. The original introduction for me and for several of us into the classic monsters that our parents and grandparents' generation at that time grew up with, going back to black and white movies. Creature of the Black Lagoon, Werewolf, Mummy, Frankenstein's monster, and of course Dracula. All together in one film. I mean, it is the perfect dream scenario for us as horror fans to have all of our classic favorites together at one moment. Throw in elements of another popular movie from that time, Goonies, that whole friendship, coming of age, team building kind of thing. And this is a movie that's easily relatable for young kids, that introduces them to several different characters of horror that have been reprised and reimagined so many times over you couldn't possibly count them. And you've got a great movie to introduce them into horror. And something that from your own childhood, you can share with them and show them the way you got into this genre. If you want to give it a watch, you can find Monster Squad for free on Crackle. Jumping forward almost 2 decades to 2002, we find Eight-Legged Freaks, number 3 on the list. One of Scarlett Johansson's earliest movies, somebody who's very relevant, very popular, and very familiar to your kids given her work in the MCU as Black Widow. With Eight-Legged Freaks being a movie that was one of her very first, she's at an age at that time to be more closely relatable to those who were introducing this movie to. With Scott Terra in the film as well, playing her younger brother, even if Scarlett Johansson is still of an older age than your kids and she's not entirely relatable, there is still another character who is, and the sibling rivalry between them is something your kids might relate to as well. What makes this a great horror film introduction is that it's another one that really well balances comedy and horror, making it light, fun, comical, easy to digest for younger viewers, but also because it hits on one of the most popular phobias anybody has, one that's very popular amongst youth, fear of spiders. You take that fear of spiders, you amplify the spiders by about 300 times and send them rampaging through the city, and you've got something that's comically adventurous and fun, and yet still has moments of horror. Unfortunately, Eight-Legged Freaks is not available streaming at the moment, but you can find it anywhere video on demand is available. At number 2, the only TV show to make the list, a Netflix original called The Santa Clarita Diet. Starring Drew Barrymore and Timothy Olyphant. Unfortunately, this show has been canceled. There's not going to be new seasons of it, but there are 3, I think maybe 4 seasons in total, and it is well worth a watch. An excellent, really entertaining, really funny show. Drew Barrymore, Timothy Olyphant really lead and steal this thing across the board. It's funny, comical, and relatable, and it presents zombies in a way we haven't really seen before. Drew Barrymore, the mom of the family, ends up becoming a zombie early on, first episode. But it's not the kind of zombie you're used to. There's no rotting, dying flesh that's turning gray or green and falling off her bones. She's not mumbling words or losing her mind. She's not just trying to run around eating brains senselessly. She still has her wits about her. For all intents and purposes, she's still alive. She's just undead alive, bringing something new to the zombie realm while also giving us something that allows for a lot of comical situations. And they do occur. A great group on screen that made the show really funny, really enjoyable, really relatable, and yet really approachable for younger viewers, with the young daughter and the boy next door who's got a bit of a love interest thing into her, giving kids somebody they can relate to, and a scenario where zombies are now approachable, rather than something to be extremely feared of, like we've seen in 28 Days Later, Night of the Living Dead, anything George Romero ever made. This is not that case. A great TV show, well worth a watch, one that you and your entire family should be able to enjoy, and a great way to introduce another classic horror creature to younger viewers who are just starting off. All of it available for you to watch on Netflix. And lastly, at number 1, the newest of any of the things we have on this list, and our top recommendation by far, another Netflix original, Vampires vs. the Bronx. A movie that only just recently released, going back about 5, maybe almost 6 months ago now, and one we reviewed at that time as a fresh fright. If you want to know more about the movie and our full review of it, you can hit the link above. But as far as its approach, its storytelling, its characters, and why it's a great movie as a launching point for younger viewers, for those of us children of the 80s who grew up with things like The Lost Boys, this is a modern version of that, subtracting what Lost Boys had in some of its adult themes and sexual situations, so making it even more approachable for younger viewers and easier for parents to use as something to approach horror with. Another one like Monster Squad also, where it's a team, a group of young kids that are trying to save the day. A lot of team building, a lot of friendship, a lot of coming of age moments, all presented with a diversity of characters that easily provide any child somebody that they should be able to relate to. You can find Vampires vs. the Bronx exclusively on Netflix. I highly recommend you take the time to enjoy it. All right, that's it for me today. Another 5 on the board. I hope this list answers some questions for those of you parents out there that are constantly asking about what kind of movies you can use as launching points. In the future, I will have more lists like this, and we'll keep progressing forward with movies that are more serious, more gruesome, giving you every step to use along the way, taking them from something like Vampires vs. the Bronx all the way into 28 Days Later, into your more gruesome, darker, sicker situations, the absolutely most horrific things that we love as horror fans. As always, I invite you to take a moment, hit that subscribe button and the bell, and don't forget to participate in today's Horror Snob Hall of Fame matchup. Of course, as a Forgotten Favorites list, today's matchup is simply, which of these 5 did you like the best? You can include Santa Clarita Diet in there as a show. Just simply mention your favorite in the comment section down below. Be a subscriber to our channel and follow us on Facebook, all for your chance to win a free 1-year subscription to Shudder. My name is Michael James. I am the Horror Snob. As always, I thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.